Yep. Give me a nod when you're ready.
Like
Shooter's ready. Stand by.
Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of Bullets and Bourbon. I'm Matt Gundlach, and I'm joined by my co-host Frank Gow. Tonight we have an old friend, emphasis on old, Darin Morrel. Darin is the owner of Red Stitch Targets, a connoisseur of nice bourbon, and the match director for the upcoming Intergalactic Falling Steel Championship at Shadowhawk Defense. Darin, before we get started with all of this, can you go ahead and do a quick introduction of yourself?
A quick introduction. Okay, my name's Darin Morrel, and I'm the owner of Red Stitch Targets. There you go. That's my introduction. What else do you want?
I don't know where you're from, so what your credit card numbers are, social security number, home address.
Okay, I'm actually from here. I born and raised in Northern Virginia. Hated the place. Left as soon as I could when I was 17 with the intent of never coming back here because I've never liked this area. And at some point, the Marine Corps saw fit to send me back here. And I've been stuck here ever since. And so I'm back here. Like I said, started the target company 13 years ago when I left the Marine Corps, and that's what I've been doing ever since. And now I spend most of my time running a 12-year-old down to play softball. And so that's my standard every weekend life. And in the middle of that, I try to maintain my mental health in some form or fashion through photography or shooting or
Bourbon.
Drinking bourbon, because that's a bad thing, but that's what I do. So there you go.
Awesome. So, you already alluded to it. You served in the Marine Corps. What did you do while you were in the Marine Corps, and what were some notable events that you remember while in?
So, that's a, you know me a long time. I don't talk. Yeah. I don't generally talk about, my time in the Marine Corps too much ever, unless I'm with other Marines for the most part. So most people don't generally know I was in the Marine Corps because I don't
You don't advertise it.
Yeah, I just don't. It's one of those things I did, enjoyed it. So I joined the Marine Corps when I was 17, right out of high school, off to Paris Island, did my thing. Signed up for 6 years because I wanted guaranteed overseas, guaranteed infantry. That was the thing I wanted to do. I had to get out of here. And the parents were pissed that I came back from MEF with 6 years instead of 4 years. And then they sent me to, they made me a mortarman, which I was initially pretty pissed about because I didn't know what that was. And I thought that was a bricklayer. I honestly thought I'd be making mortar. And so I had no idea. So I'm a 17-year-old kid right out of high school. I think I'm joining the Corps. I'm going out there. I'm going to jump in helicopters. I'm going to go land on beaches. And nope, I'm going to have a wheelbarrow full of mortar. And they're sending me to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, which this might sound, to me, it sounds stupid today. But I didn't know where Cuba was. So I'm thinking this is bullshit. I signed up for overseas. Where's Cuba? No idea. And so, I was quickly informed what mortars are, which still is not a very sexy job. If you think Marines, nobody knows what mortars are. No idea. You think it's that little gun on the World War II movie that goes cough, and a little thing goes out there and it goes, boom, it's not really loud. In retrospect, I actually really enjoyed it. I really dug into that when it became one of those things I really enjoyed because I actually qualified for every job in the Marine Corps except Hawk missile systems, which we don't have anymore. I just chose I needed to be a grunt. And so the math was very easy, and that became very easy to me. And they sent me to Cuba, which was also probably a very good first duty station that most people don't get to go to because right out of the gate, I don't want to say it's a real world mission, but it's technically a real world mission. You got
It is.
Right at the gate. I'm standing post by myself, 8-hour shifts by yourself in a tower, live ammo.
You have Cuban
really
asylum
are,
seekers crossing the international water
yeah,
into, it is a real world mission. It may
it
not
is.
be sexy,
But you
but
don't know. But when you first join the Marine Corps, you think that every weekend you've got a new beach to land on, a new country to conquer, and you don't know that. And so me going there initially right at the gate, I'm thinking I'm missing out on the Marine Corps because I'm down here, I'm standing on the post with live ammo, and I've got to call in reports on is that ship riding high in the water and what's on deck, and that Cuban guard post over there, they had a vehicle moving this way, and some guy blew up in the minefield, and you deal with all that, and you have this guy jumped over the fence at 2 a.m. You're doing a react to go capture this clown, and so in my mind at the time when I'm 18 years old, I'm getting screwed. I'm missing out on the Marine Corps because they sent me down here, and this is bullshit. Like everybody thinks when they first join the Marine Corps, everything's bullshit, and so a year down there, everything was live patrols, live ammo, and there's some hairy shit that goes on down there that you don't ever really hear about. Mine's going off at 2 a.m, 100 yards away from you. It's terrifying. You have no idea. You're 18 years old by yourself. That's terrifyingly loud. Cubans shooting 50 cals in the water at people trying to leave the island or the town of Caymanera into our base. And they skip all around you. It's terrifying. And then you look back when you're 50 and you're like, yeah, that was funny. That was good times. So I left there and I went to 1st Battalion, 2nd Marines. And the funny thing is, when I got there, I have this very unique perspective of I came from having live ammo, doing guard mounts, standing post, doing real stuff. Actually going to retrieve people that are defecting, whatever you want to call it, to people who complain about doing a 2-hour guard mount or a guard shift at the armory. People who complain because they had to have duty tonight. When you're coming from 7 days straight of 8-hour shifts by yourself, it just seemed very like you hear all these rumors all the time about when you get to the fleet, it's so hard, it's so different. And I got there and I was like, oh, this is like a step down to some degree, until you start working on like new workups and you start doing some of the cool stuff. So I got into like the Hilo company with our MU workup, and first deployment I did was the 24th MU over to Mogadishu. So that was like the first kind of real world, I call that like a real world type thing. We went over there. And again, you're doing, you're walking around the city and everybody hates you and it's hot and it sucks. And we left there probably 2-3 months before the whole Black Hawk Down thing happened. Same area, same exact place. I watched that movie all the time and I'm like, yeah, that's where we were. So we left that. I did a couple of deployments at a 1-2, went down to Paris Island as a drill instructor. That's another, like, most people would never guess that I was a drill instructor. So I don't yell anymore. I don't yell. I try not to get mad. I try not to get, all worked up, and I do on occasion. But for the most part, I don't. So I did that for a couple of years, went out to 1-3 in Hawaii. That's about when 9/11 happened. So 9/11 comes along, and all of a sudden now everybody is real excited. Now we've got something really to do. Because for the first kind of, 10 years of me being in the Marine Corps, there wasn't like a real world thing going on. I came in at the end of Desert Storm, and I luckily went to Cuba where I had to do kind of real stuff. Mogadishu, stuff like that. Yeah, it's real stuff. But it's like the same time period where you had your Kosovos and your, those kind of things were kind of like we're the world's police force, but not like a real, world direct action type thing, which we kind of turned into. So 9/11 happens, and I'm over in actually Camp Hansen in Okinawa, and it's the middle of the night for us, and it's the middle of a typhoon, and we get woke up, and I remember there's guys walking, live ammo patrols on base on Camp Hansen, 50s at the gate everywhere, and the water's ankle deep on base because it's a typhoon, and the typical Marine Corps, everybody's thinking, what the hell are we doing? What's going on here? And it kind of progresses into we don't do anything, as you'd expect. We go home. And the beginning of that turned into, which most people I think don't really know, is we went to probably 100 different countries before Iraq, Afghanistan ever happened. That's where all your anti-terrorism thing really was before we said, we need a big target. So that's what you did. You find everybody going to all these little countries, tacking all these crazy little terrorist groups. And So 1-3 at the time, I'm down there, and I'm out there for, at this point, 3 years, coming up on 4 years, and I should I should be out of there by then. And I'm trying to get orders out of there. I've been there for 2 pumps. I'm trying to get to OCS actually, and my monitor won't send me there. He's like, nope, send you to SOI. And I'm not having that because I've already done 2 infantry battalions, drill instructor, down in Guantanamo. I'm not going. I feel like SOI is a step back for my career at that point. I want to go to OCS, be an OCS instructor. Won't do it. And so he's kind of like, hey, find your own orders. If you can get some orders, I'll send you that. Because he doesn't want to do the work. Master Rifle. That guy can rot in hell. And so I call everybody at Quantico, 4th LER, you name it, everybody at Quantico. And everybody's like, yeah, we'll take you, absolutely. Are you a drill instructor? I'm like, yes, we're not taking you. Because as soon as you get here, they're just going to take you over to OCS. And so if we take you here, we're losing that slot. So we're not doing it. And so now I'm kind of pissed. About this time, an old platoon commander of mine, who's a captain now, he gets saddled with having to take the Marine security element down to the Philippines for some of the OEF stuff. And he asked me if I'll come down and be his platoon sergeant. And I'm kind of like, well, I'm sitting here with nothing to do. Sure, whatever. And so I'm taking down that unit there, with 50, 60 guys, which was mostly, your heavy machine gunners, your tows, those kind of people, because our mission down there was basically guard the airfield. So when P3s come in from whatever they're doing, provide security when P3s land. And we get down there, and I got saddled with a job, basically running anti-pirate security, running Delta guys over to the island of Basilan. And so, it sounds flashy, but it's like 2 a.m., meet down at the dock, get on the boat, ferry them over there, secure the landing, and sit there for 6 hours so they come home, 3-hour ride back. And I did that for about a month, which is incredibly boring. But there's plenty of funny stories from it when you think about it. So kind of finish up down there. And about this time, the battalion sergeant major kind of gets involved, saying, hey, this guy needs to move. I was there for 54 months in 1-3, which is a monster, length of time in an infantry battalion. And so he's calling the monitor. The monitor's kind of like, I'm busy, don't really care. Regimental sergeant major gets involved. So the guy cuts me orders to headquarters Marine Corps. So at this point, I'm a staff sergeant, and he cuts me orders to headquarters, filling a E5 reservist billet that hadn't been filled in 5 years. So I'm kind of pissed. It's kind of a bullshit job. It's the leadership instructor, Marine Corps leadership instructor. And so I get up there, and my job, I'm not kidding, was to run a corporal's course, which was, they ran it 1 time a year. It was a 5-day class. And that was my job. And I was there for 5 weeks, and they sent me to do an interview to go to OCS for the summer. So now I'm super duper pissed because that's where I wanted to go, but they won't send me there. But as soon as I get there, that's what they're going to use me for. And so they sent me to OCS for the summer. I worked down there, and I had a good team. Platoon sergeant was a guy who was also a summer guy, a gunny. We got along really good. The other platoon sergeant or sergeant instructor, what the hell they call us, good dude. He was a permanent personnel dude, and we had a good platoon. We worked the summer, did the 2 6-week classes. It was great. Came back and kind of turned in the corporal's course into this 5-week class where I taught them drill, sword manual, got on manual. I was a black belt instructor, so I taught them McMap every day. They PT, did McMap. And so I made it something worthwhile. And we started having people come from literally all over the country. We had guys coming to our corporal's course from, England, from Colorado, from, people came to ours instead of Quantico's because it was 5 weeks. So it became a good course, but at the same time, it's like, what a waste of my time. I was really kind of disgruntled, kind of getting, burned out on the stuff. I'm a gunny at this point. And why the hell am I the E5 reservist leadership instructor of headquarters Marine Corps? And so somewhere in the middle of all this, I go back another summer platoon. I work at 10 weekers out in Quantico again. And I kind of come back from that, and I'm really kind of burned out on everything. About this time, Iraqi freedom's going, people in Iraq. And I started having some, having some run-ins with some of the admin chief, female gunny, who just got master sergeant. So she's out there saving the planet, one bullshit show at a time. And you start running into all the things at headquarters Marine Corps where There's monster amounts of double standards, which they exist, especially in the infantry. They exist, but you never have to see them. You never have to deal with them, so you don't care. You sit out there and it's the things you make fun of and you laugh about, knowing that there's guys out there who, get a third-class PFT and get 4950 pro cons, right? That. And I go up there and I start seeing that exact thing. I saw guys who would get I'm not kidding, a 232 PFT. They don't have to swim. They don't do BST. They don't deploy. They don't do anything. And I can, honestly remember, getting in guys' ass about not shaving, stuff like that. And then watch their pro cons come across the 3 shop going 4950 because they're a good Marine. And it starts to eat at me because I remember you got the fleet and the infantry side and you crush guys because they got a 290 PFT because they didn't get, they got 19 pull-ups. They're still running 1858. And you crush those guys. It's not that you're crushing them. You're holding them to, if you want that 4950, well, that is a 300 PFT. That is an S1 swim coil. That means you are not the guy who's not falling out of hikes. You are the guy who's you are the guy mentoring other people. And that's just not what happens at headquarters. And you see it, these guys that they're required to do nothing. And there's some good guys up there, some good kids up there. But in general, you see it. And I remember seeing, things that would eat at me is like, say, for example, Commandant of the Marine Corps, not doing his PFT. Because he don't have the time for it. And you see that, I'm like, well, you kind of get it. You're a 4-star. You get it, right? You're the Commandant. But at the same time, there's a Marine Corps that says you can't get promoted if you don't do your PFT. You see guys that say, oh, this kid ran a third-class PFT. He's not getting promoted late. And then you see Colonel whoever doesn't do it. When I first got there, there's 2,200 people at Headquarters Marine Corps. 700 of them would do the PFT. They just wouldn't do it. They say, I don't have time. I don't care. And you think about it, if you had some PFC or Lance Corporal, Corporal Sergeant tell you that, I don't have time, you'd lose your mind. You're like, you make time. It takes 30 minutes. And then you have for example, shit was a sergeant major at that time.
Estrada.
He called me from Germany on a Thursday, in the afternoon. He says, and the sergeant comes to him off and says, hey, it's Sergeant Major Marine Corps on the phone. Pick up the phone, what's up, Sergeant Major? He's like, hey, I'm getting on a C-141. I'm going to land at Bowling at 5. I need you to meet me at headquarters to run my PFT. And what do you say? Roger that. So there's me and the sergeant out there, just him. Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps shows up. He's in green. And he's not showing up in board shorts and a tank top like half the guys up there do. And he hops up there on a pull-up bar and he cranks out a hard 13. And I'm like, that one don't count. He rests, pulls up another one, another 2. That one don't count. Sergeant Major. Hops down, gets his 14, 15, whatever he got, does his crunches, and everybody maxed out 100 crunches because that was that's a guarantee. Cranks out his run, whatever he did, I don't care, I don't remember. But the fact is that this guy rode a plane all night long, get back to the headquarters, and then to just run his PFT because it doesn't matter what his score is. He's not getting promoted again. It doesn't. All that matters is the fact that
he's holding himself to a standard.
Yep, he did it. And you've got a pile of people out there who don't. Whether they're captains, they're colonels, they're sergeant majors, they're master sergeants. And I can remember, 2-star generals showing up with their major aide, giving me shit because I'm not giving this 2-star his pull-up. And this 2-star jumping down and telling the major, back the fuck off. Gunny's doing his job. 2-star don't give a shit. Don't affect his career none. He's getting the fact he's out there is what's important. Mm-hmm. And so you start seeing that and living through that environment. Man, it ate at me. I'm up there for 3 years or whatever it was, and I got to a point where I'm just like, there's all these people, the IG standards of people that they write the standards, they don't follow. And I'm thinking, how do I go back to the fleet and crush some kid running a 265 PFT, which is pretty good, who lives out of his sea bag, does deployment after deployment, who's always in the field, who's got no money. He's probably got 7 girlfriends, 3 car notes, 5 unknown kids, all kind of problems. But he's out there busting his ass. How do I go out there and get in this kid's shit and say, you're getting 4.4, 4.6 this time because you're doing a pretty decent job. because I'd look at these guys downstairs and think, this kid's getting 4950. He's going to get promoted a year, 2 years ahead of that kid. And at some point, they all become 99.99. And that kid's getting there way much faster on the back of doing half what that kid did. That kid's walking out. I watched a staff sergeant, get kicked out of his unit over the Navy Annex because of a sexual harassment claim. Still walk with a meritorious service medal. And I just see it. And you see it and you're like, I know Lance Corporals who've done a ton more that leave with a CertCom because it meets their rank.
Mm-hmm.
And so it got to a point where it just ate at me so much that I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. And then I had there's this the admin chief, a female master sergeant. We had some issues. She did some shit. She ran a code on me saying I had refused orders, which I'd never received yet. My first day back from second summer at OCS, because I told her to get the fuck out of my life, basically, because I was talking to my master guns about thinking about getting out. And that pissed me off. That was my final straw. I'm like, who are you to just go run this code that I refused orders? I didn't even have orders. And then she tried to basically, because she felt like I embarrassed her. Another woman who hadn't run a PFT in 2 years, but picked up master sergeant. She's rocking a stack of 4. She'd worked at, headquarters, MMEA, Pentagon, headquarters, just homesteaded in that area. And I just got to the point where I'm like, if people like this can affect people's careers, we don't know anything about the Marine Corps. Never been in the Marine Corps. Wouldn't survive in the Marine Corps. And so I just got to the point where the new sergeant major came in. He tried to get me to stay. Ockfield sponsor came over, tried to get me to stay wherever you want to go. And I was like, I'm done. Taking my ball. I'm going home. I'm good. 15 and a half years. I'm good with it. And so there's my Marine Corps career in a nutshell. And there's all kinds of good shit in the mix of all that I gloss over some. But there you go. There's kind of what I did to some degree.
Well, I just remember the story about the student the recruit nearly drowning, but we won't go into that.
Well, in all fairness, you don't get in the water. It's a last resort. You don't do that. It's if you can't, a good instructor can talk somebody out of drowning. That's what we used to tell each other. If you got to get wet, you're a bad instructor. And so there you go. And there may have been a few people that jumped in to save some of my people, but I stayed dry. So what can you do?
But so you got out of the Marine Corps and you went into starting Red Stitch Targets. Kind of where did it start? Where did the name come from? And then what made you kind of want to get into the steel target business?
So when I was stationed back here, and my mother and brothers had kind of started a business. And my mother had been doing it for like 20 years. That's what she'd always been doing, selling like technical furniture, which sounds boring. And it is. But it's the stuff that fills up data centers, server rooms, skiffs, Texas Instruments. I mean, those kind of people down in Texas. The F-22 plant meets rows of these open frame rack systems that hold, computer chip, machines, whatever the hell they are. So that's what they did. And my mother had been trying to kind of retire forever. And so my younger brother had always worked for her, essentially. Older brother, graduated college, electrical engineering degree, always been successful. Always, I don't say everything's always gone his way, but the guy's always been successful. Just always had, everything's always worked out. He's always been very successful. And so he got out, did some things, and got to a point where he didn't need to work. He'd retired. He'd done work. He didn't retire anymore. He's only a year older than me. And so by the time he's 30, he's kind of done. 35, he's done. And so they get together and start this new company because the company my mom was a manufacturer's rep for was shutting down what they did, going a different direction. So they bought the rights and everything to that product. They asked me if I'd come run the operations of that because they didn't have any experience in operational logistics planning, stuff like that. And it made it an easy transition for me to leave the Marine Corps. So that's what I did when I first left. So I left the Marine Corps on Friday. Monday went to work there doing that. And the following Friday, my older brother, who was the president of the company, quit because I was so hard on him for how he was doing things and what he was doing. And it's just one of those things where we just saw things differently. from a logistical and operational standpoint. And, you know, I think his wife was getting him some shit about the hours he was working because he didn't need to. So he's like, well, fuck it, I'm out. So he left. And so my mom and my brother make my younger brother the new president, who basically had never done anything other than work for her. So he never had to work for somebody, never had to earn something, right? He always came up through, it was taken care of, you know, from the time he's in high school to that. And so there I am now, seeing everything through a kind of a mission, you know, mission focused point of view, where it's like, well, this doesn't make sense. This is a bad idea. This is stupid. You know, what are we doing here? And so they got to a point a few years down the road, where business isn't coming in anymore. They just always seem to always come in. Like, well, at some point you have to develop, you have to evolve, you have to, you know, stay, you know, in the game, or else people pass you by like anything else. And so I kept telling them, you need to add a new product, start a different thing, make a new wing of this. Something's got to happen, because, you know, technology has changed. Like, if you think about, and you might be, maybe you don't remember, the original computer monitor was a big giant box.
Mm-hmm.
Before the flat screen. Everything now is a flat screen monitor. Everything now is a pound. Well, they used to be like the old school big TVs. Mm-hmm. And so every computer arm, you see the monitors are on these arms. There used to be big things called caddies, and you'd have big racks that held 8 of those. Monster size and weight. Well, as that stuff develops, like your cell phone, they get smaller. Everything gets smaller, and you have to keep developing this stuff to stay in the game. And they didn't want to do that. They just figured it would always keep happening because they have government stuff. And so I was trying to make the point to them, hey, you know, we can do anything. We can make fucking wheelbarrows, you know, garden hoses. I don't give a shit, anything. But you've got to do the work. You got to market it. You got to build it. You got to design. You got to keep staying up with it. And they didn't buy into that mindset. And they slowly but surely got less and less business every year. So I started, you know, this just kind of on the side, just to make a point to them. Well, you can do anything if you're willing to do the work. And so I started this thing, which I wanted to just do like metal fabs. So just make something from nothing. I don't give a shit what it was. Just make something. You know, if someone asks, can you make this? Yes. And then go figure out how to do it and get it done. And that's probably something that the Marine Corps taught me. You know, I need you to do this. Fair enough. Give it to me. I'll go get it done. And so the first thing I ever kind of made was a dueling tree. Someone asked me, can you make a dueling tree? I have no idea what that is. I'm like, what is it? It's just, you know, you shoot a target goes back and forth. Okay, that seems very easy. You know, Google up a couple pictures, figure out what it is, look at it. Okay, make a dueling tree. So that's what I did. And I made a kind of in the old days, kind of a cheap, shitty website, which had like if you remember like the old eBay buy now links, you'd click it and someone could buy it, and it would send you some money based on like PayPal or some crap. And so that's what I did, just to make a point to them, say, hey, look, we can do anything if you want to put the money behind it. And this is the time when they're doing couple million bucks a year in revenue, right? And it just kept going downhill. And so they just didn't get that. And so, you know, a couple years down the road, 2 years, 3 years down the road, I'm covering the rent because I got to a point where I just start, you know, make something new. And so this is before I got into like competitive shooting, because when I left the Marine Corps, I want nothing to do with a gun, a uniform, you know, none of that shit. I grew my hair out. I didn't do anything. I didn't want nothing to do with that structure anymore. I was so kind of bitter when I initially left. But they didn't really buy into that. And so that's why I started this thing. I didn't want to do targets. I had no interest in that at all. I didn't even see that as a viable business model. But I saw like metal fabrication, designing things and building things as absolutely. And so in hindsight, you know, had I followed that path and done, you know, metalworking, I would probably made a hell of a lot more money than following the target side, because that's a very niche thing. It's a very niche thing. Anybody tells you there's any money in targets is you know, smoking crack. There's not. And so once I started doing that, it became one of those things where I'm come up with a new target. And then I started spending my focus and time on a website, you know, trying to you gotta get marketing, get the word out there. Well, then you get to a point where we can't sell targets, flashlights. You know, it's not the same website. It's not the same market. And so I kind of pigeonholed myself into targets, and that kind of, you know, leaned into it. And that's what I did. And then just kind of, I didn't know anything about targets. I didn't, I didn't shoot. I wasn't into this guy. I never saw steel targets in the Marine Corps. We didn't shoot steel targets ever. And so I started doing that. And there was a local club up near me. It's the oldest USPSA club in Virginia, which is gone now. And the two guys that ran that kind of reached out to me out of nowhere and came out to the shop and wanted to buy some stuff. And they're the ones who kind of directed me towards the competitive shooting stuff as far as targets go. Can you make this? And I'm like, well, what is it? Yeah, I can make it. At this point, I bought my own, CNC tables, and I'm buying tools, and I'm sitting there, and I'm younger, I'm full of energy. I'm working 120 hours a week because I don't care. I'm single at this point now. I got nothing but time. And so I started doing with these guys, and they keep trying to get me to come out to these matches. And I'm like, I don't have the interest. I don't want to be involved with it anymore. And so they're the ones who kind of got me into it. And then, Mike Oberman, he all of a sudden reaches out to me about sponsoring a 3-gun match. And I don't know what 3-gun is. I can do the math in my head, and I'm thinking, okay, 3 guns. And I don't know if that means at the time, rifle, pistol, shotgun. I don't know if that's what that meant. I thought maybe it just meant 3 guns, 3 rifle. I don't know. And he sent me an email, and I kind of looked at it, and I didn't have a care in the world. Didn't care. Not interested. I took it as you're asking me for some free shit. And I'm having a hard enough time, paying the bills here. And so these guys from Gravitas up there, they keep coming by, and they're buying everything in cash. And they come out there and tell me what they need. And they're starting to tell me about, we want this type of target, with that kind of target. Can you make this? Can we make it like this? And these guys, I think I've told you this before. Hands down, best 2 guys I've ever known as far as competitive shooting when it comes to stage design, matches. And you don't see them anymore. They had their own thing. They're both grandmaster single stack guys. And you want them, you look at both of them, and I think, when I first met them, I thought, I'm 15 years in the Marine Corps. I'm 13-time expert shooter. I know what I'm doing. And I have no idea. And you see, one of the guys he's like, I don't know, 270 pounds. And I'm thinking, there's no fucking way. Just tell me how to shoot. And they bought a bunch of stuff, lots of poppers and knockovers, just very easy things to make. And so they finally convinced me to come out to one of their matches. And so they keep telling me, just bring your gun. I'm like, no, I'll just come out. Like, no, just bring one of your guns. I'm like, okay. And so I roll out to the apple orchard, and I've got my Nighthawk T3, 4-inch barrel, seven round, magazines, 45. And I got my leather holster, and I don't have a mag pouch, because that's never occurred to me that you need 14 mag pouches to shoot single stack. It's never even, no idea. And I get out there, and I see all these stages set up, and I'm like, the fuck is this? And so Dave Binkley kind of comes over, and he's like, hey man, you're going to shoot, right? And I'm like, no, I'm just going to watch. No, you're going to shoot. And so he gives me his belt, because, obviously a 1911, especially a 4-inch barrel, sticking in anybody's 1911 holster. So he gives me his belt. It's got mag pouches all around it. Holds 7 mag pouches. I only have 4 or 5 mag, whatever. It doesn't matter. At that point, it didn't matter. So they ran a match up there, which had for Falling Steel Match, 4 stages. No, you're going to shoot. So I load up my shit and head out there. And man, what an eye opener about how awful a shooter I was. It's a total kick in the teeth that you think that the Marine Corps taught you how to shoot, and then you find out that they didn't teach you a thing. There is absolutely nothing I learned about shooting from the Marine Corps other than, I would say, the fundamentals of shooting, and that's it. And so you see, and I kind of laugh when I see people these days who come out when they first come out to shoot, their fundamentals are garbage. I'm like, well, at least I have that foundation that I had, like the fundamentals of the simple, the trigger control, the sight alignment, sight picture, the breathing, all that bullshit that you don't really think that matters, which doesn't when you go to the range. Everybody thinks they're, scout sniper with a pistol. And I went out there and got, absolutely smoked, because, in the Marine Corps in 15 years, I never had to do a reload and move. I mean, think about that. You never had to reload and move ever. I mean, you do that the old slow fire qual, you do 3 rounds, reload 3 rounds, but that's not reloading and moving and actually having to make it count. And so I never had to do that stuff. And so it was a soul crusher. And but it also at the same time, I was like, I really like this, because the stages were just you look at them, you think, well, this shouldn't be hard, but I wasn't good enough to do it. And that bothered me. And so I had a friend that came with me. And this is one of the guys who was in the Marine Corps, not with me. We went to high school together. I could tell you 1,000 stories about this guy. He came out with me and he joined the Marine Corps. He was an ammo tech or some shit. And he was the kind of guy that every time the Marine Corps birthday comes around, he's got his new profile pickup of him and his blues. And he's like hardcore, right? Did all the shit, but he never did anything. He comes in with me, and he's the guy who can't grasp the concept that this isn't tactical. This is a sport. This is a speed game. You don't have to seek cover, and you don't have to knock down at some point, there's a break point where, time trumps knocking down the target. You can sit there and say, I need to hit every single target. And well, that's great. You got every single target in 1 minute and 42 seconds. I left 3 and did it in 38 seconds. I smoked you on that stage. And he wouldn't grasp that concept of it. And so I started seeing that right away. And so I started spending a lot of time with those guys, doing classes, doing training. I started shooting all the time. And I found out real quick that this is not going to be a competitive gun for me to shoot with 7-round magazines and a 45. And I'm not shooting reloads. I'm shooting like, hardball factory, 190 power factor. I have a 4-inch barrel. And so they made me a 45 that they were building guns to. And there's a guy who worked at Quantico, Sean Sullivan, maybe. I don't know if you guys even know him. He was a gunsmith down there on Quantico with the Marine Corps team. And he made these guns for him. So they made 3, and I got one of them, and it was a full-size gun now, which made a monster difference, which seems dumb, but 1 extra bullet, a full-size gun, 5-inch barrel, made a huge difference. And I started shooting that. And then they kind of convinced me to go to try the USPSA side of it, where they did 6 stages out there with the USPSA. And that was almost like a totally different game. That's where I learned that it was really a speed game. That's where I learned with the steel, you don't realize it so much. When you go to the paper stuff, you notice right away that it is speed. And so I started shooting some of the USPSA, and the rules are what fucked me up to some degree. Like I'm the guy that would drop a magazine and go over there and like I ran out of bullets. I'd go back and pick up the magazine off the ground to finish my stage because I'm thinking I need to hit everything. It's not the rules. And so that's where I started shooting like competitive stuff. And I spent a lot of time with those guys for training stuff, going to class with them. And so I started shooting a lot. I did classes with, Shannon Smith,
Frank Garcia.
Frank Garcia down there. So I started shooting all the time. And that was my thing. Like I would shoot 2 or 3 times, a week after work. I'd go to like Elite Shooting Sports. I would go shoot. I'd shoot every match they did. Every other weekend I'm up there shooting matches. And so I got to a point where I shot all the time. And I always shot single stack. And so what I got very good at was reloads. And so you start seeing a lot of guys who are terrible at reloads. It's like almost like they pick a division where you reload once maybe. Or PCC came along, they don't reload at all. But I shot single stack for years where I'm smashing 4 or 5 reloads every single stage. And some people, I'd see people that they, like my buddy who would always shoot, basically limited, just whatever Glock he had. And he started talking some shit about how he beat me by, 1 second, this match. And I'm like, bitch, I gave away, 7 seconds a stage in reloads. Like,
that sounds like somebody we know that shoots PCC.
It's like, yeah, but you think about it, you're like, I hear what you're saying. We're shooting different divisions, but you start doing the math on some of these things, and it's like, dude, there's a monster. I used to know how much time it took me to do a reload. And like, you do that 4, 5, 6 times a stage, every stage. So I started learning about that. Became my thing. So now I have this. It's ingrained in me about if you're moving, you better reload. Mm-hmm. And that kind of bit me in the ass when I moved to shooting limited, because all of a sudden now I'm dropping magazines with 14 rounds still in them. And I was so used to doing it. I'd get to some matches where I'm starting with whatever it is, 70 rounds and 4 magazines. And I'm out of magazines because I keep dropping the mag when I move. And I get to my final spot and I'm like, I have no magazine left. So, you know, there was a learning curve there with that kind of stuff. But those are the guys who got me into, you know, shooting, which is where the targets kind of progressed from there. So I started, you know, doing a lot of time with targets for not necessarily USPSA, but for like just falling steel. And so there's no rules with falling steel. And so you could kind of make whatever, do whatever. And those guys were really good about that. And then introduced Mike Oberman, who kind of, you know, he came back the next year, you know, and again, I'm like, who the fuck is this guy? Now, he didn't just email me the next year. He drove up to my shop, which is like a 3-hour drive. He just arrived. And so here comes, you know, Mike rolls up into the shop, and I'm just like, fuck. And this is like, I work by myself. I don't have anybody helping me. And so I'm like, who the fuck's this guy? And he's got his two-page, you know, brochure about Blue Ridge Mountain 3-gun match. And I'm just like, look, man, I said, I don't know what 3-gun is. I don't give a fuck. It's in the middle of, I'm just starting to shoot. So I'm trying to process what I'm doing, which I really suck at right now. With whatever he's talking about, people shooting rifles and shotguns and running around and galloping about and being awesome. And I'm just like, I don't see it. And he kept asking me about a specific thing, these auto reset mini poppers. And he kept telling me, we've got to, and this is one thing to remember about Mike originally, we've got to support this one part, because when they hit it, it falls back. This part's, you know, not armored, and they'll shoot it again. And I'm like, I remember telling him that there's no way that someone's shooting 100 yards away and they're going to double tap a target that's going to fall back, and then the second one hits underneath that before it falls. There's no way. And he's like, oh yeah, these guys shoot really fast and they're really good. And I'm just doing in my head, I'm thinking, no, this is something I've got experience with. And I've shot a bunch of shit with the M16. There is no way you're double tapping shit at 100 yards where the bullet's going to get underneath this target. And so I said, you know what, I'll make an armored one. So I did. And I sent him one of these things down to play with it. And he called me and said, you know what, you're right. There's no fucking way they're hitting this. That doesn't happen. But that's where I got that relationship with him. And that's what actually helped kind of take off the target business. Because I didn't have to start off and go through, you know, the local club match, the local little match where there's 30 people shooting 3 base stages of 3-gun. I kind of started off at, you know, one of the bigger matches out there with some of the hardest shit out there. So I got to put my stuff in front of matches that, you know, Andy Horner makes that, you know, it's soul crushing. And so right away, so he got me to come down there the following year. And I'll tell you, Andy Horner is probably one of the best matchmakers I've ever worked with, because he's never, he doesn't want a lot. He'll absolutely take everything you'll give him. He'll tell you all the things he needs, but he's not trying to fleece you, which is what I've learned a lot of people do. But what it gave me was kind of a proving ground to put out any target I wanted that I came up with. I could put out at Blue Ridge, and I know I'm getting 300 shooters on it, and, you know, good conditions, real close, whatever they want to do it. And I would find out, is this thing viable or not? And that was my biggest benefit to what Mike brought to me when he drugged me into that 3-gun stuff. And he will always tell you too that he always apologized to me for dragging me into that, because of how, you know, it kind of developed to some degree, which I can tell you later. But that's how I kind of got it. I started using that to develop targets. I'd watch some of these shooters. And you're talking about you know, your Jerry Micklicks, your Ryan Mullers, and your Jurassics, and your Aaron Hayes, and your, you know, Dylan Easleys, and your, you know, all these, your Daniel Horners, the whole AMU crew. And so I got to watch that. That's the guys I started off with, you know, shooting on the stuff that I would develop. So I look at that from the point of view, I hear what they had to say about things, and I'm like, well, this means something. When I compare that to going to like the local club match where you've got, you know, Billy Joe Bob and his whatever his fucking single shot 410 telling you what you ought to do this, you know, I've had people, you ought to put a piece of cardboard and tire, roll it down the hill. It's like a moving target. You know, it's like, well, that's not helpful. Yeah, it's not helpful at all. So that was very helpful to kind of develop things that was viable right out of the gate. I didn't have to, you know, build stuff that sucked, and then find out later that, you know, that I thought was great that sucked. You know, I learned right away. So that was kind of a nice thing, by going with those guys. And Andy was always, you know, I can remember bringing 20-25 grand of steel to his matches, and he didn't want none of it. It's like, no, you sell it during the match. So he was he was actually very helpful. Him and Mike were very helpful in me getting this thing really going in the early days. Those guys from Gravitas and those two were probably the biggest, help for me to get this thing going from the very beginning.
No, that's awesome. I mean, I've known you for a long time and I've just seen, I've seen the progression even from whenever I first met you, which you were already clear on your way. And we met at Blue Ridge Three Gun Championship back in 2016. But even since then, it's like all your targets have really just continued to develop, and you're always just coming out with something new. And how can I challenge the shooter with something different or give them something new? So, I mean, you've done very well at it. And I know you've told me, dude, anybody can fucking do this. Anybody can design this shit, but I don't think they can. Like, um, it's you got a talent, and you got a very creative mind in coming up with a lot of the concepts that you have. But Frank, you got this next part.
Yeah, for sure. So there's a lot of variations of falling steel matches. I'm excited for this one coming up. What was the thought process behind naming it Intergalactic?
Naming it?
Yeah.
So this is kind of goes back to like, so I used to sponsor 7, 8, 9, 10, majors a year of 3-gun stuff. I really got really heavy into 3-gun stuff because of Mike and I kind of branched after I met a lot of the guys at Blue Ridge, and that kind of, spread me out into a lot of the other matches down in Texas or a lot of stuff in Rock Castle, Colorado. So that's where I kind of, started doing that stuff. And so, years down the road, I started watching some of these matches and I started looking at some of the names, and everything started becoming like a world shoot. Everything was a world shoot, an international shoot, the championship, everything was like these amazing titles of how, you're going for the international world dynamic shooting championship of awesomeness. And so it always made me laugh because I'm thinking, well, it made me relate to like baseball in the World Series. There's only one team in Toronto that's not in America. It was the World Series. The Super Bowl champ is the world champion Super Bowl team, but there's nothing from the world really playing. And then I would look at people that went to like and let me preface this with not trying to bash all of my friends who've been to the world shoot, world rifle shoot, world pistol shoot, world rifle shoot, shotgun, whatever the hell it is, all over the place. I go to Thailand for the world shoot. And I started watching this and I see that it's not your best shooters going to those matches. It's who's willing to pay their way. And so don't get me wrong. There's some fantastic shooters that go. But then I would see some of the people who do go and I'm like, I don't want to, kick you in the nuts here, but my fat ass can beat you. You just we got 7 slots and like, who wants to go? And people are like, I can't afford to do that shit, or we're not paying the way for them. So it's like, well, I'll go. I got money. And so that's what it turns into. And so you look at it and you're like, well, what's the pedigree of a world shoot? I mean, is it really like the best shooters saying like you had to battle your way into saying, there's a whatever you call it, a tiered, thing that says you won this and this and this. Now you're the one qualified to go. And it's almost like, well, that's not what it is. It's to some degree is that might be where it starts. But then you look at like, say, the Marine Corps shooting team or AMU. It's like, why aren't they there? Because no one's got the funding. No one's going to send them. Or it's got a conflict of interest to another match that's local, which costs less. And so that's where it came from. It's like, well, I'm going to make this. This isn't going to be world. It's going to be intergalactic. Aliens are everybody's involved. Everybody's allowed to come. So that's it's kind of you're not saying it's a joke. It's a joke on how people name matches, basically.
Are we going for dimensions next?
What's that?
Like planes of existence, dimensions? I mean,
absolutely. We're going to
might as well take it all, right?
Yes, we're going to do all that stuff.
All right. Yeah, I'm all about it, man. How long have you been planning to like host a match on your own? So
I've never had any interest in hosting a match. For the most part, I don't mind. I used to not mind sponsoring matches. I used to sponsor a lot of matches, and I really walked away or stepped away from that years ago. And I've never wanted to host a match or sponsor a match. I don't want to do the work. I don't want to do any of that because I know a lot goes into it, and I know it's kind of an unforgiving job where everybody is either going to love it or shit all over it. and you're going to have a whole core of people who are going to sit back, who didn't attend it, didn't support it, didn't do anything with it, and they're going to kind of bash it because, you know, from their computer at home, they're going to shit on whatever the trophy was, whatever the stage was, whatever the match director was, whatever it is. And there's, you know, that's what social media has brought to the game. So I've never wanted to do that. This particular match, you know, you go back 8 years, 10 years, and the guys at Gravitas, they were putting together the Iron Outlaw Falling Steel match. And so this was their thing. And I was the title sponsor of that match. And I was providing all the steel for it. It was all their stages, their designs. And like I said, those guys, you know, hands down to this day are the best stages I've ever shot. At a club, I've shot better club stage matches, club match stages that they put on than I've seen at area matches. I mean, hands down. I wish that range hadn't got shut down because, you know, the owners wanted to lease it for hunting, because those guys were absolutely awesome. So they had that match out there, and it just didn't happen, whether because of the marketing, the advertising, it just didn't happen. And so my name was out there as the title sponsor, and they decided to just kind of not do it. And there's a lot of, you know, kind of high-end people coming to it, and they at the last minute decided not to do it. And this is back kind of early on in my business's days, where I'd been doing this for 4 years or so. And but it bothered me that people started calling me saying, "Hey, what's going on with your match?" And I'm like, "It's not my match. I'm just this title sponsor. All I'm doing is providing the steel." So that didn't happen. And then like the very next year, they got shut down as the orchard got shut down. And so now that's gone. And then Shadowhawk is kind of where everybody kind of transitioned to in this area. And, you know, a year or so later, they had wanted to do the same kind of thing. And so again, I'm the title sponsor of this thing. And I have nothing to do other than provide the steel. And they had their own match director and they're doing all that kind of stuff. And without dropping the name of the guy who I'm not a fan of, was effectively lazy. He still wasn't getting it done. He wasn't doing it. They were taking their time about getting it out, which is starting to stress me out, because I was up at the outdoor show in February. They're talking about having it in like I want to say May. So you're talking about February. You're talking about 3 months out. They're trying to have a major match, and they haven't put it out to practice for. They haven't put it out. The stages aren't designed yet. Nothing's done. And I'm like, look, hey, this is not a paper match. I can't just whip up $30K worth of steel in a week. It takes me a bunch of time to actually, you know, build this shit. And so I started getting frustrated with it. And so I called down to Mike Oberman, and we talked to Shadowhawk, and we're basically getting rid of their match director. Mike's going to take care of it, and we're going to do it that way. So Mike, you know, made up the 10 stages, which were all good. He went up there to the range. He did some measurements and put together the stages. He put together the rule set, and kind of the whole package was ready to go. And so that's what we were going to do. They put out the package score. People started signing up, and then they had their issue with Peacemaker, with that whole "I'm suing you because I don't like the fact that you're a range next to my range," and that killed it. And so second time now, that same match with my name on it didn't happen. And so now I'm kind of like, I told Lynn and Randy, I'll never sponsor a match in this area. I'm done with this shit. I'm fed up with it. I feel like every time we try to do this stuff, I'm getting kicked in the teeth in this area. But I can go to any of these major matches down in Texas, Rockcastle, Colorado, North Carolina, South, all over the place, and it's hugely successful. And so, you know, fast forward, you know, till this year, and you know, Chuck, who's doing it with me, he called me one day and said, "Hey, man, so I just feel like I want to do something this year. I want to, you know, just there's nothing going on. I want to do something." I said, "Well, I've got this match I've had on the shelf for the last 5 years. If you want to do this," and he's like, "Fuck yeah, let's do that." I'm like, "Well, all right, I'm in," because I'm pretty easy to a fault. I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely, let's do it." And so I think in a matter of 2 days, he's jumped on the old internet device and he's cranked out a practice score page, and boom, it's out. I'm like, "Well, fuck, I guess we're in. I guess we're doing it." And so at the same time, in my mind, I'm thinking, then I'm being the match director. I'm not letting somebody else control this again, where if it fails this time for whatever, it's my fault. It's on me. I don't get to look at someone else and say, well, you didn't market it, or you didn't, your neighbor got pissed. So this time, if it sucked, it's on me. 100% it's on me. So I never had any intention of being a match director, hosting a match. That's how it started. That's where it went. And that's why. So it's one of the things. I already had this thing ready to go. Like rule set. Here you go. Already have those. Already have the stages. I have a good idea of what I want for stages when they're kind of based on what those guys trained me with. And so then it's just a matter of kind of the logistics of kind of what do you have for props? What do you have for? I have a location. I've got the location. I got the range. I got the insurance. I've got I have the steel. I don't have to go find anybody for steel. So that's how that came about. As far as I never wanted to, but maybe I spoke too soon and said, "Hey, let's do this," and he was all in, and so am I. And so I want to do it too. So there you go. That's where it came from.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm happy it's going on. And it doesn't surprise me that Shadowhawk is a good partnership with you guys.
Yep.
That range has always been very easy to work with. If I need a place to practice in a pinch, Lynn will always get me hooked up with the Bay. And we've interviewed someone else, Brendan Soder from Range Project Group International. He does his night matches over there. And he comes all the way up from the Panhandle of Florida just to run matches up here. And I think that speaks to how supportive Lynn and Randy are of the shooting sports. You did mention stages. So with an all steel match, what is your, I guess, on two planes, what's your philosophy for stage design in general? And then your philosophy for how stages should be, the diversity of stages that you should see at a major match?
So like I said, when I first started shooting, competition shooting, it started with steel. And I kind of came up with the from the idea of steel is pretty much you're shooting A's or nothing. I see people that come up from shooting paper only, and they're really hyper focused on going really fast. They really want to show you the timer. Look, I did this in 8.4 seconds, but they don't ever walk down and show you the 7 mics they just dropped on that thing. Everybody wants to show you that, and there is absolutely a break point where there's guys who absolutely go fast, shoot A's, and guys who go fast and drop a bunch of mics. But the Instagram doesn't show that. And so I came up shooting a lot of steel, and my mentality has always been, steel is humbling because it tells you right away that you missed. And so when I kind of got into it and kind of transitioned to USPSA, there was a lot of steel in USPSA then. And I feel like it got to a point, and I don't know what it's like now because I don't shoot at USPSA anymore, where USPSA completely almost turned their back on steel. And I would hear a lot of match directors and people serious say, well, it's not reliable. It's not consistent. It takes too long to reset. And I remember thinking that stuff. And I'm thinking, well, I shot a lot of these matches. It takes long to reset? The guy in your squad who always wants an overlay because he thinks he keyholed everything. The guy who always needs to call for calibration, even though he hit 9 inches below the 12-inch, pepper popper. So, what takes long to reset is the fact that you've got 12 guys in your stage or squad and 4 of them are reset and the rest of them are sitting back there hanging out. So there's a lot to it. I mean, there's a lot of things in steel where you go to scoring, and if steel's not going to go set it up, paper, you stand away for someone to come by and say, Alpha Mike, tape. So, you can make steel reset just as fast. So I feel like a lot of people walked away from shooting a lot of steel. And I think if you watch guys who shoot a lot of paper, not steel, you'll see them constantly, run through a stage, pop, and miss and see them go back because it eats their lunch up. Where if it was paper, they would not go back. They would assume that I had a good sight picture, and I hammered that. So I think steel can be a big mind game to some degree. And so when I look at steel, for example, I feel like you can take people and put them in tough shooting positions on steel, whereas paper, I feel like a lot of the matches, they will put the paper very close to you because they want burner stage, they want things to go fast. So you go out of walls and you'll come around a wall, but the paper's a foot away from you, a yard away from you. And I've shot a lot of matches where, like I said, I shoot single stack and I come around a wall and I, hammer off 2 45 rounds and 14 pasties go flying. And I remember playing stages we watched and well, just give them 2 alphas. And so that's one thing I hate about paper is that I think it comes back to, it could be stage design, where paper you can be very close with paper and get away with it. So you can make a lot of things happen in small condensed areas, where with steel, you have to have that standoff. So you've got to find a way to make that challenging to some degree. And I think some of that can be making the shooting position challenging, make people shoot from uncomfortable positions. And that's what I was, kind of brought up with shooting, just awkward, unnatural, kind of shitty shooting positions. I mean, forcing people to shoot, wrong-handed, half squatted down, all just weird, things that aren't they're not gimmicky stupid, but it's not letting you stand right out in the open and shoot steel. And so, so my kind of philosophy is if you think about like a star, a regular, mag star, Texas star, whatever you want to call it, I see a lot of matches put a star out in the open because it's 5 shots, and everybody who's ever shot a star more than once is going to take that top shot and just, move right and ambush, and you're done in 3 seconds and move on with your life. If you put that thing behind a low wall that you got to shoot only the bottom target, it is a completely different target. If you make someone shoot a low wall, weak-handed, it's soul crushing. And so there's a lot of things I think you can do with targets that make them far more challenging by putting, and I think that comes back to the match trick, put them in a tough position, put targets in, unnatural positions, awkward positions you have to shoot from or shoot into. And what I've always kind of enjoyed is watching people who are very comfortable shooting things in very comfortable positions. And I'll tell you a story, and if he hears this, I don't give a shit. And so there's a stage we put up at Shadowhawk 3-4 years ago, and when I first made the Mag Star Deluxe. So it's like the regular double star that you'll see, one in the front, one in the back, and they have extended long arms. And so you've got a 5-arm star in the front, and you've got a 6-arm star in the back with a short arm in the middle of the back arm. And so I made this stage where you had a wall that you had to shoot. You only shoot from the bottom. You can see through it, but you can only shoot the bottom of the star, bottom third of the star. So you're shooting the bottom, which means it's going to spin. And these are long arms, so it spins fast. And you got 2 US poppers at 25 yards. And so the deal was that you start over here, and you got two US poppers, 25 yards, bang, bang. And you take the star from like 15 yards, I want to say, or 10 yards. I forget if it was 12, 15 yards right here. And so I made this thing, took it up there, tested it out, works. And so we went and shot the match. And I shot this with single stack. And I did it in 45 seconds single stack. And it's like my second, third time ever shooting this setup. And then you have someone come out. And it was very challenging. We gave somebody a 20-second benefit if you took the whole thing from the 25-yard mark. And that's one of the things that the Gravitas guys would always do. They would give you an opportunity to get a big benefit, or it's going to kill you. And that's one of the things that I really liked about those guys. And so I didn't think anybody would take it from back there. And so I shot it, did it 45 seconds. Scott Warren, bragging about 10-time national champion. He's shooting single stack. He quit, with 5 or 6, 7 targets to go. So this is just bullshit. This shouldn't be out in this kind of match. This is too hard. And it's exactly the kind of thing I look at. I'm like, but you want to brag about being a 10-time national champion. And I get it. If you're saying, you know what, I'm going to take the benefit of, I'm not going to knock these down in the time benefit I would get for the penalty. I get that. But it's exactly what it is. You want something right out in the open where you can go fast because you're very good at that kind of thing. When you take someone out of their comfort zone, it eats their lunch. And there was a guy who shot carry optics from 25 and cleared it in 21 seconds. And so I'm like, it's absolutely doable. It's absolutely attainable. But the mental challenge, I feel like, in some of those target setups crushes people. And that's kind of what I enjoy seeing. There's always someone out there who, keeps their shit together and doesn't get rattled by whatever the stage is, whatever the design is, whatever the target is, whatever the rules are, and just gets their job done. So that's kind of my philosophy to the stages. I'm trying to make some stuff where there's some fast stuff, some challenging stuff, some awkward position stuff. I try to make things that flow, some things that intentionally don't flow, because I'd like to see people, see their mental game, how much it takes them out of the mental game, like that wobble board, something like that. You see people that get so pissed that that's ridiculous, it's not realistic. I'm like, well, what is realistic? Because what do you mean realistic? Nobody's shooting back at you. It's just one of those things. I feel like, testing someone's mental game with shooting is just as important as testing their fundamentals and their actual accuracy and speed. So
yeah, because by definition, the champion should be able to do everything well.
absolutely,
right?
absolutely.
And
yep.
if you really have that mentality, then Doesn't
Yep.
matter if it's a short course or a stand and deliver or a classifier. You just go out and you smash it. I'm with you on the Texas Star. I think the first time, like, everyone shoots it and like, this is amazing. And then they reset it and like,
Yep.
maybe it's not that amazing.
Yep.
But I think the best presentation I've seen was 2 barrels on both sides of it to where you can only see the center of the star.
Yep.
And basically, like, you were trying to snipe it as it was
Yep.
swinging really fast on the top or the bottom.
Yep.
I was shooting production then, and I went through all my magazines, but still got that son of a bitch. But it was good challenge. Yeah, great challenge.
Yep.
So excited to see some of the target presentations,
Yep.
you know, that are going to be at that match. But so far, you know, you're through part of the planning cycle. What are some things that you've noticed already that if you decide to do this again, you would perhaps do differently?
You know, honestly, probably a larger, called a larger staff. You know, more people. I mean, when my first idea about this too is having sponsored a lot of matches over a lot of years. Is there was a point where I got to where I felt like sponsors take away from a match, because you get to a point where some of the major matches where you have, you know, gold, platinum, diamond, you know, titanium sponsor levels. And it's like, give me this much money, this much product, and you get, you know, 2, 4, 8, 10, 12, 100 sponsored shooters. And then you look at it and you think, well, you know, you've got 350 shooters in this match, 60, 70, 80 of them are sponsored shooters. None of that money actually went to the match. And some of that goes to a prize table, which means it's lost. And so I get to a point I felt like you look at people, you know, some of the bigger name companies, you know, providing higher level stuff, get 5 sponsored shooters. Those are the same sponsored shooters who walk the prize table first. So the same people who aren't paying for the match are getting the results of the match. And it's one of those things where I always felt like, you know, if you're not one of the chosen few, you will never get to go get the, you'll always cost a lot of money for you to play this game. And so I watched a lot of these things, and I got to a point I felt like that. So I felt like when I did this match, I don't want any sponsors. I'm gonna do this myself. I started thinking, well, what does a sponsor bring to the table? I could argue that somebody like a Magpul, a Sig Sauer, who sponsors everything under the sun after their Army contract, they can sponsor everything because they have massive money. Well, what do they bring? What marketing? You know, they're not bringing any new shooters to the match. You know, they're not doing anything on their end. You know, you put the name out there and people are like, oh yeah, you've got Sig Sauer sponsoring it, but what are they really doing? You know, they're going to put a couple guns out there. Well, who gives a shit? It doesn't help the match. And so I felt like I don't want any sponsors doing this myself. I'm going to do a cash payout because I feel like people who perform are the people who should reap the benefits of that. I've never been a fan of the person who finished 72nd place getting to walk the prize table and get a bunch of gear. And then, you know, I've watched guys for years who complained that the prize table wasn't good enough. I didn't get enough, so this is bullshit. I paid $380 and all I got was this Magpul D60. And I'm like, well, then you should have stayed home and bought a Magpul D60. You know, so I always look at that. I'm like, well, and if you want to, you know, get a higher level of return, then be a higher level shooter, you know, perform better. And so I've always felt like if I paid $150 for a match and you had the opportunity to win $150, well, then it's a break even. And obviously, if you've got your ammo cost and your travel, well, there's an opportunity for you to, you know, actually turn a profit without having to say, well, I need to see if I can sell this friggin' Sig 320 in the parking lot. So it's very, I feel like it's an easy thing. Like, you know, the money that comes in is the money that goes back out. And obviously, the more shooters that show up, there's a break point where suddenly I'm covering my expenses. And I can assure you, I'm not covering any expenses on this one. I'm eating this, which is I'm totally okay with, because I feel like I think I've told Matt this on a few occasions that for me, I see this as a marketing opportunity for the company. So that's how I see this as marketing. You know, that's what I see for the pictures, the opportunity that people come out. So if it's successful, then maybe I do come back next year. And I would see that, like I said, with maybe some more staff to help out with different things, to do different things. Would I want to do sponsors with it? I don't know. I would feel like the sponsor would have to be of the same mindset as me, to say, like, you know what, I'm not in it to peddle my shit on your prize table. If you want to lay down $1,000 and cover, you know, the $100 payout for 10 stages, well, great. And if you get a bunch of people to do that, maybe the payout becomes larger, because the way I'd see it is I don't want your product. I'd rather have your cash. and turn that cash around to the shooters. And that's how I would see it. So that if you could come to a match where you could have the potential to walk away with, call it $500 for each stage win. I think that's what I would rather have for a match. That's what I see as a more valuable thing than, the same old goddamn 17 PMags and whatever. And there's the place too. That's just my mindset of it. So
Got it. Just a couple more questions, and then we'll hand it over to you. I'm aware that you are making a lot of the steel up for sale after the match. When should people expect like a list or understand? Like, I would like to buy some for sure.
So probably, to be quite honest, probably about 2 weeks out, I'll probably post when I've got everything's like hardcore final. As in, I'll probably post an actual list of this is everything that's going to be in the match. It's all for sale. This will be the price. That's probably when. And so everything that's in the match to include like, your knockover stands, your targets, your wall stands, your any of that stuff. It's all going to be available. A lot of reasons, because I don't have the way this place to store it for one. I can, but it also I'd rather move it down the road because, like I said, as a marketing operation in my mind, I'd also rather put the steel in people's hands. So that's probably 2.5 weeks, 2 weeks out.
Okay, cool. Looking forward to that.
Yep.
And then the most important question of all: will Matt be able to shoot a shotgun?
Will Matt be able to shoot a shot? Okay. So I was prepared for this one. So I told him from the very beginning. So when I first started this, my initial plan was to have shotgun. I want to say it was not PCC, it was pistol shotgun, open optic shotgun, I think is what it was. And Chuck didn't feel like that would be a popular category. I thought differently at the time, and I said, and we decided, we'll shelf that until next year. And then almost immediately, like Aaron Hayes reached out, a couple other people reached out, said, "Hey, you have a shotgun category?" And right away I said, "No, maybe next year." And then Matt started badgering the shit out of me about it. And I told him, I said, "Hey, you know what? If you can get some interest, then we'll do it. And I'll make a decision in July." And the fact is, I've got maybe 6 people that are interested. And so your answer is no. There's not going to be shotgun this year. There just isn't the interest. And I'd like to do it. I always felt like a shotgun could be a good match. I just don't see the interest in this area. I'd do it, but I just don't see it. And so I'd mentioned that maybe we do some kind of, catch me, fuck me fun thing with shotgun. And maybe we do. Maybe, and I thought about perhaps making like where the side stage is going to be. End of the day, building a specific shotgun shoot off type stage where maybe you want to go up there and maybe it's a head to head type thing. Maybe it's a timed thing where it is a side stage, I think, something to that effect. Maybe it costs money, maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's just for fun. Can Matt shoot a shotgun at the match? Yes. Can Matt shoot a shotgun in the match? No. How's that for an answer?
That's a good answer. Just had to throw that one in there.
All right.
But yeah, no, super excited for the match. Anything else that you want to leave the listeners with at this point?
I would just say, 13, 14 years I'm doing this now. I would just say to all the people that have ever supported me or bought stuff over the years, I would just say thank you. I mean, I appreciate the support, and I would hope you continue to support me. I know things have been tough the last few years. It might seem like, lead times slow down, things like that. And that is I'm a victim of circumstance of the economy and things like that as well, as far as getting materials. It's not that I don't give a shit. It's just that I'm having a hard time getting shit. So I would just say, I appreciate the support as always, and I hope that continues, and hope to see you guys down the road.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, we'll post a link to the Intergalactic Falling Steel match. So hope to see you all out there. It's going to be a great time. Gundlach is a wonderful range, and I have no doubt that this is going to be an amazing match. Let us know if you have any questions. If you want to hit up Darin, we'll tag his account, and let us know how we're doing, and we'll see you on the next one.